Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I'm your host, Ryan, and I am joined again by Amanda Pierson, the resilient social worker on Instagram. And I'm so excited to have you back. She was on, I looked this up this morning, season 1, episode 10. So now we're recording for season 3, which will drop later this winter. And I'm so excited to talk about all things trauma. How are you? Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, back and better than ever. I'm happy to be here as a second round guest. We're in a different season. I feel like this is going to come out in the winter, which is when we recorded last time. But right now it's summer. We were just talking about our summer vibes and how it's hard to work in the summer because you just want to play outside. But yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. This probably won't be relevant in the winter, but my best friend texted me and she's, is it a brat summer for you? And I was like, I don't think so.
You know,
I don't think so.
sad girl summer.
I'm just like, I still want to be in like Goblin Girl season. Like
A goblin girl. I love that. It's right around the corner.
I know. Well, I just want to live that life. I don't, yeah. But I was like, so it won't be relevant in the winter. But I was like, I don't think it is for me.
I'm ready for a lot of things not to be relevant. 6, all of it. I'm ready for winter.
Yeah. Maybe, are you okay talking about politics for a little bit? I feel like Amanda and I are going to talk about trauma. We're going to jump into that a little bit, but I feel like politics plays a role in that. And we're in this really weird season right now with, do we call it a season? We're in this really maybe shitty place that we've had a candidate drop out,
Yep.
be an assassination attempt all within 2 weeks.
Yeah. It feels like we're literally in, I shouldn't make light of it, but like a skit. Like we're being punked and pranked.
Mhm.
And I will say it's the hardest time to be a therapist. And maybe that's why I feel like I'm like army crawling through summer, is just having to stay regulated with your clients as they're navigating like this traumatized world, even thinking about myth of normal, talking about like the societal traumas. I feel like this is it. Like we have itty bitty control, but in our locus of control, there's so much just tolerating and coping and hoping that we're having to do. And it's a tricky time to be an American. It's a tricky time to be a therapist.
Yeah, it's really been a lot. And I think even 4 years ago, I don't remember having conversations as much as I already have had this year and like this past month alone
Yeah.
of just everyone sitting with the heaviness of what is the state of America going to be in 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed more than ever, like this deep existentialism, like people feeling almost like the world is ending. What is our purpose? Like a lot of kind of spiraling, catastrophizing, all of the things, which is valid. I do my little bits of spiraling, but I've been
Yeah.
prescribing, if you will, worry time more than ever. Do you know that skill of worry
Oh,
time?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell listeners about it a little bit.
Yeah. Worry time sounds silly in a way, but it's really a tool to help with rumination and kind of protect your peace in the rest of your day. And the idea is that I encourage is we push that worry time to the end of the day. I think 30 minutes is like a sweet spot, maybe no more than that, like 15, 20 minutes sitting with your journal and truly just letting yourself like let it rip. Like just write down all the worries, write down all the fears, write down like anything that's on your mind and let yourself ruminate for those 20 minutes, with the caveat that throughout the day when those intrusive thoughts or disturbing thoughts or things that you want to explore pop up, we could write them down very quickly, but we are delaying that and using our distress tolerance skills until that time comes. And then I usually encourage you to sit with kind of your circle of control and go through and cross the things out of our control, circle the things that are in our control to then reset, use our coping skills, and go back to our life. And I've been really more than ever reminding people, go outside, take a
Awesome.
walk, notice the flowers, the temperature, all the beautiful things of our world, because I know this is all very scary on like that macro scale, but like it really is okay when we step outside we take care of ourselves, we get out in nature, like things aren't so scary on like our micro day-to-day view. So it's good to take that beat.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I love the worry time. I love journal. I've been telling so many more people to journal, and I just I know the look on my face. I'm like, is this going to backfire on me? Like, this is the one thing I recommend that people are like, why? No, I hate it. I'm like, but trying it once doesn't give you permission to hate it.
Right. And I feel like people tend to hate the rigidity that they associate with journaling.
Yes.
And when I talk about journaling, like we have no rules with journaling. This is not something we have to do every day, every week. Like we want to be intuitive with it. So it's a pleasurable activity where you can get it out of the mind and body, not something that has to be a to-do list item, right? Like, that should be an escape for you, a way to take a load off.
Yes. Get some fun markers, get a notebook,
Oh, yeah.
just make it messy. It doesn't, yeah, take the rigidity out of it. Have
Yeah.
fun with it. That's
We
what I
don't have
tell
to go
everyone.
back and read it also. Just for the present. I don't think I've ever in my life gone back and read a journal prompt. It's
No,
cringe.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. You're like, I don't want to.
Self-protection. It's self-protection not to.
Yeah, no, I tell my millennials, I'm like, go get some gel pens, like the jelly rolls. Go old school, some flares. Yes.
Yeah.
And just
Favorite.
have fun with it. Like just let it all out on the paper and close it and then move on. Like we're done. We don't have to revisit. We don't have to come back to it. Just get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on
Which is
top of it,
kind of,
go
it's
ahead.
like psychotherapy
Yeah.
in a way. Nothing is therapy besides therapy. However, you get to jump and have that space held for you.
Yeah.
The only alternative is in psychotherapy, you're going to go back to it. We will remind you of it.
Yeah. And while we're talking about going outside, I've been really trying to couple that with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Yeah.
And even for me personally, that just is so much more grounding. For those of you who follow, like I'm outside all the time. I love being outside. I love telling everybody to go outside because it's such a good reset. And it's a very easy, accessible reset, right? But if you can couple it with something else, it just takes the experience to the next level.
Totally. We have both been on that wavelength on our Instagram stories
Yeah.
of, can we get back to the basics? Can we get outside? Can we move our body? Get some sunlight? Sometimes the seeds approach, if you will, sleep, eating, exercise, doctor's orders, and self-care are really the ultimate like groundwork of mental and physical health. And I think we can see a big difference in mental health conditions when we're just doing that. And I love that idea of using the grounding. I even tell folks to just take your daily walk and make it a mindful walk instead.
Yeah.
So not listening to music, not being on the phone, not talking to someone, but instead just the art of noticing, right? Can you notice like the dew on the flower? Can you notice the tree, the sound it makes when it shakes in the wind? It sounds silly, but the way that my nervous system just breathes when I do that little bit of presence is amazing. Same thing with like just laying on the ground
Yeah.
outside.
Putting
I
your
don't,
feet in the grass barefoot.
yeah,
You don't, if you
exactly.
can't go for a walk, just go put your feet in the grass.
Yeah. Lay on a picnic blanket and
Yeah.
just exist on the earth.
Yeah.
It's again, it sounds silly, it sounds basic, but the ultimate coping skills are going to occur if you can get outside and if you get it in our natural resources. I think we're a little distanced from that in our modern society.
Yeah. I've also been putting people on some screen time timeouts. Let's start limiting some of this doom scrolling and setting like screen limits and schedules and using your iPhone maybe for more of its smarter features than its social media features of what or whatever phone you have of like focus times and just shutting down a little bit more and distancing a little bit more.
Yeah, it can be a tool or it can completely run us, right? And I saw you had an Aura ring. I just got an Aura ring a couple weeks ago. I'm loving it. And I'm loving like finding myself using my phone more to be like learning about myself, using like
Yep.
different tracking apps, natural cycles, 28, all of that, rather than scrolling. And I feel like it's so moving because when I'm looking at my health and I'm keeping it in mind, it doesn't make me want to go doom scroll. And back to the politics piece, I've also had to have a lot of conversations around screen time, limiting our access. And it's okay, right? Like as much
Yeah.
as we want to stay informed, I think that's very important. I will never deny that. We also need to protect ourselves during this hard time because if we're constantly dysregulated and hyper or hypo aroused, we are not going to be effective in our day to day. So politics is putting us into that place. We require those limits for our own mental health. And I think that's a realization people are more open to than ever. I used to have a lot more pushback on topics like that, but I think people are seeing the impact and the benefit of taking a step back.
Yeah. Yeah. Even my step back from social media has changed my life. And it's not been that long, but it's been like 6 months, which is a long time when you think about someone who creates a lot of content and tries to put a lot of thing out there, like a lot of things out there, and then to just cut it off for a while and just come back when I want to has been really freeing in a sense. And also from a physiological standpoint, like I feel more regulated. My brain fog is a little bit less. Like I can focus a
Yeah.
little bit more because I'm not constantly worried about like, what's going on Instagram, what's going on. I'm not TikTok because I hate TikTok, but all these
Yeah.
other places.
Yeah.
And especially now with all the politics stuff popping up. And sure, I love a good meme, but not enough to, that's not worth it for me to hop on and end up scrolling for hours.
After your 6-month break, how have you reframed your use of Instagram personally, but specifically also as a therapist? I'm curious.
It is very reframed of only when I want to. So even there's been times like where I'll go out on a walk and I'm like, this is a great time for me to just like, pop up a story or make a quick reel while I'm walking like around the lake. And I can film the lake really quick and do it in 30 seconds, but I'll open the app and I'm like, oh, this is icky. And I just close it. And before I would have been like, no, you need to do this because this needs to go out into the world. And now I'm like, no, it doesn't. I don't have you guys. I only have 2,200 followers. I'm not having some massive impact over here. Like, and I think like people were like expecting. I do have some loyal followers who like love the content and share the content. And when one takes off, sure, like that's great. But also I've really recognized like the ick of I don't want to do this and I don't have to do this
Yeah.
for anybody.
No.
And that was a huge realization for me as personally and as a therapist.
Yeah. What a beautiful kind of like visualization of the brain versus body, right? Like you open the app and your body says no, your body's not interested. And you are listening to that versus the brain kind of running the show. I'm even thinking of like anxiety and inside out. I've been obsessed, but whoa, we
Yeah.
could take a step back. There's no one with shackling us to have to
Right.
post. There's no expectation. There are no requirements. You come first. And I've noticed that with myself too, like almost getting frustrated with myself when I feel like time's passing and I'm having no thoughts or ideas or pull to create content. But I'm trying to be very gentle with myself that like I've been saying this quote a lot, but it's seriously not that deep. You know what I mean? And no one cares. Really, no one cares. Yeah, there's some people that would benefit from the post. And usually when I'm making any type of post, it's for the goal of maybe this could help someone out there.
Yeah.
And when I feel like we're in that rigid sense of we have to have this cadence and we have to be consistent and all the things, like we're losing our value and purpose of, at least for me, my why of initially ever making any type of therapist-based social media.
Yeah. And I think this is really interesting. We're going to come back to trauma, guys. Don't worry. We're working backwards, I feel like here. But I was recording a podcast yesterday, which will be also on season 3. His name's Alex. But we were talking about a lot about like statistics and numbers. And I think he was like, prior to recording, he had asked me like what the stats were on my podcast. And I was like, none. I feel like, I guess like decent in the sense of it's only in season 2 and I don't do a lot to promote it, but it has very loyal listeners. They like pretty consistent amount of listeners for each episode. Like when I post things, they get shared and like it's slowly growing. And I was like, if this is a concern for you, we can talk before we record because this isn't going to get you a lot of attention. That's like how I feel about Instagram now. Of like, I don't care about the numbers. They weren't doing anything for me. They were giving me a little bit of anxiety, a lot of anxiety to feel like I had to post to make sure that I was reaching more people and like getting more likes and want to live that life.
We are not like a metric. And as much as there's so much value in kind of that wise mind view of like our reasonable, rational mind and being able to consider facts and what is reality, but also like emotionality, purpose, human connection. When we bring those together, I think it's a healthier balance than being so data driven, particularly when talking about media, because that's when we have this like FOMO comparison. And it just gets, in my opinion, to reflect your word back, just icky, right? It doesn't feel good. It takes me back to like when social media was coming out when I was like a teen And oh my gosh, if I didn't get likes, what that would do for the self-esteem. What about you liked the picture and you wanted to share it with your friends? That's it.
Yeah. Well, and did you see the trend of rating people now? Did you ever watch the Black Mirror episode where they were
Yeah.
right? So it's like the trend of Black Mirror in real life. So they're posting videos of people and rating them and giving them a score. And I was like, what the F are we doing as a society? This is so detrimental to people's well-being, mental health, confidence, like all of the things. What are we doing?
That's bizarre. I also know a lot of people are talking about this idea of bringing bullying back in this really subtle new reality way of like people need to like humble themselves and people need shame.
Is this the put the fries in the bag, bro?
I, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is not it. This is not where we want to go. We don't want to go back to degrading people and impacting people on their self perception and mental health. Like we are going way
Oh.
too far. Reel back, kindness,
And
commodity.
what are you getting by intentionally shaming people and putting them down? I understand the concept of bullying 100%. My core demographic has been kids for a really long time. I get the point of bullying, that it serves a purpose for the bully.
Yeah.
However, you are grown adults, adolescents, you're growing. What are we doing? Why?
Yeah.
Just be nice to people. We already live in a really shitty world.
And even just coming from the lens of like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Sure, extrinsically, when you bully, it can make you feel cool and powerful, but internally, I think there's a
Right.
lot more going on in the system, and that's not supporting your self esteem from that higher level function. And we all know that it comes down to suffering. Yeah, it's a nice point of reflection before we make that nasty comment or do the rating or decide to bully for others' benefit or whatever we're perceiving it as. It's nice to just reflect and think like, why am I doing this? How is
Yeah.
this serving me in any capacity?
Well, now that we've covered grounding exercises, social media, bullying, should we talk about trauma?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Amanda and I have been doing a lot of reading this past year on trauma.
Yeah.
We've now really, I think, deep dived, whatever we call it, head first into like
In.
intergenerational trauma. We're in. We're fully in. What is what do you consider the difference between being traumatized and trauma or experience? Where are we at here in the spectrum of things?
Yeah. It's a big topic because trauma is overused. I am not sure if you watch Big Brother.
I have, yes.
There was an episode last night where there was an adult woman bullying a younger guy and basically sharing that she felt traumatized by the way that he confronted her in some way. And the way that it got blown up was so intriguing to see on live TV and also makes me think a lot about how we're using trauma as a buzzword and the danger of something like that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's also the reality in which, kind of from that myth of normal lens, we are living in a very traumatized society. To be in any marginalized population, your lived experience is trauma in some capacity, right? We all have our stuff. I do think that when we think about a traumatic event, we really know what that means, right? We can even think about ACE scores, we can think about disasters, we can think about abuse, like all of these different things that could cause someone trauma, right? A traumatic event. However, the experience of being traumatized, I've been thinking a lot more about, right? Because to be really traumatized is to be completely alone in that experience of that trauma. And really, what we can see is that when we have support through trauma, it decreases that psychological distress that leads to things like PTSD, anxiety, depression, the manifestations of trauma in our mental health. So, the idea that we can endure trauma and not become traumatized. And I think that can be a really empowering perspective more than anything else. And a refreshing mentality that as a parent, as a friend, as a partner, your ability to be there could be supporting your loved one from developing a lot of different psychological distressing concerns, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes this interesting perspective when I even think of, do you remember learning in psych about Jeannie, the young girl who had a mom who was passive, she was blind, mom was really struggling, and an extraordinarily abusive dad who raised her in a cage. She did not have access to a lot of her different needs, but she had zero social support. And there's a lot more developmental components and things going on in this specific case that led to her lived experience. And I think we can also think about the difference when a young one goes through something traumatizing and hard, and they have supportive parents and they have a good friend group and they have people that are coaching and supporting them through it, which helps them not manifest and embody that trauma as them, right? Which kind of puts us in that, I'm cautious to use this word, but like that victimized position
Yeah.
of helplessness, right? Where if we can really use our societal resources, and I know that is also a privilege. And when we have things like complex trauma, it puts us in a tricky position where it's harder to trust people. It's statistically more difficult and less likely to have a strong support system.
Mhm.
It's complex, but if we can surround ourselves socially, if we have the privilege of supportive parents, it puts us in a really safe position to have that mental health resilience. It's my current thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's not embodying the trauma, just reframing it of like, I have anxiety versus I am anxious person things, or like I have experienced trauma. I am not the trauma. Does it impact me? Yes, but you are not the trauma. You have, whether you've been traumatized, whether you've experienced trauma, whether whatever it is, you, that doesn't own you. That doesn't make up all of who you are. It's part of your life experience. And I think that's been really helpful in some of the books we've been reading, The Myth of Normal, and It Didn't Start With You. And I read What Happened to You by Oprah's book with Bruce Perry, but there's just a lot of, I don't know if misconception is the right word, maybe misunderstanding of what it actually means, feels, looks like is to have trauma. Someone being mean to you maybe upset you, but that's not trauma.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been explaining that a lot more of like, why do you feel like this is trauma? What about this is trauma versus just an unfortunate experience or an unupsetting experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenging life experiences does not always equal trauma. And I think that's a really healthy reframe. And I love the way you were speaking about the idea of labeling and the dangers of labeling. It's almost like we're burying ourselves in this like underground tunnel of whatever it is we're labeling ourselves as, rather than considering ourselves as like contextual, multifaceted beings, right? Our challenging life experiences and our trauma can make up who we are, our personality, how we move through the world, absolutely. But the delineation is the big piece that I think we need to be cautious of, with the reality that life is hard. I think
Yeah.
most beings have endured some type of bullying. I think most beings have had someone treat you like the villain when you don't feel like you're the villain. We're always the villain in someone's story. Same thing, like we deal with hard things. We deal with breakups. We lose people. We deal with grief, right? These are life experiences that, again, if we're alone in and we're drowning in and we have no resources, can be traumatizing. But the event in and of itself isn't always trauma, right?
Right.
Healthy
Right.
reframe.
Yeah. And I think going back to maybe it is still a buzzword. I'm off TikTok for a reason, but maybe it's still floating around on TikTok. But like when triggered has had its moment,
Yeah.
everyone is triggered by everything all the time. Everything is no. And in a really gentle way, you can be. Do you watch Summer House? So
I used to.
Okay.
Not,
Lindsay Hubbard, she's activated. Activated is like her word. And I'm like, gonna get a sweatshirt that says I'm activated.
I'm
'Cause I feel like, yeah, sure, you can be activated. You can be upset. You are likely hurt, disappointed, 10, 20 other words that isn't triggered. Okay. And I think in the sense of like, social media in society where we're at, that word of trauma is having its moment. It is being sensationalized. It is being romanticized. It's cool to have trauma. Like, but also we have to remember that still takes away from people who have had real, possibly significant trauma
And when I
and
think
minimizes that.
it does, it pulls from that experience and it like washes out their truth
Mhm.
in a real way. It's almost like now we need new words because they've been hijacked, right?
Right.
And I specifically think about that when I think about war-torn countries,
Mhm.
ACE scores, serious like abuse, right? That's not the same as like a mean boss, right?
Right.
There's situations where we can get out of things and where we can't, and we're really stuck in that reality. And that's the healthy thing to think about. And going back to the idea of triggered or activated, those words are tools in therapeutic spaces because those are often cues for us
Mhm.
to dig into the psychodynamic lens of attachment and why that led us to feel that emotional reaction. And being triggered or activated is not an excuse to lash out, to treat people poorly. Same thing with any emotion, right? I almost think we're treating emotionality as trauma or emotionality as like a trigger or activation when it's really someone just made you angry. And that's also a data point that like maybe
Mhm.
they crossed a boundary or a limit that we haven't yet set. That doesn't totally mean that this is stemming from a traumatic experience that we don't yet know. And I hear that more and more than ever of people coming into intakes of I'm having these different responses and I'm wondering if there's some kind of trauma that I didn't realize yet that I've repressed so deeply that I don't remember.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe we just need a little bit of like emotional education and skill building to understand emotions can feel really intense. They can take over our entire existence and they could be not drawn back to anything at all. They can just be an isolated emotion because we felt invaded or disrespected or our values were crossed, right? There's so much more to, I think, emotionality and the world around us and even like our window of tolerance
Yeah.
than just trauma.
Yeah. And I like speaking on maybe trauma is rooted in other things. We shared this in Amanda and I are in a book club, but waking up at the time that my mom told me my dad had died consistently every day for 10 years and just thinking it was just my time to wake up and really having a curious therapist who was like, there's something else going on here that's causing this.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that and it going away was like, well, like therapy's magic. I'm cured. I'm cured. Not really because I'm still in therapy. Nobody's ever, we don't cure people. But in my head, like that was a huge realization for me of, oh, okay. And even now talking about it, like my dad died 14 years ago. In my perspective, my perception of trauma, that was a very traumatic event for me. He was diagnosed and died 6 weeks later. It was very fast. It was very traumatic. However, 14 years later, I no longer identify that as trauma. It is a very sad, unfortunate event that happened in my life. So there's this continuum of it too, of you can process and work through and move this trauma or whatever the event is, get to a healthier place. We don't have to sit in it forever.
I think that is just the most beautiful story. And thank you for sharing that. Initially, when you shared it, chills, like such a moving experience of the power of therapy and the power of compassionate inquiry. And like that flip side of what I mentioned, there's a reality in which we are minimizing and rationalizing and intellectualizing all of our reality where we're like, just weird. I don't know why I'm waking up at this time. Yeah. And to have someone gently ask you, like, can we dig a little bit deeper to what might be under this? It can uncover so much. And it speaks to the reality of your resilience and the idea that you grew around your trauma. That was a
Right.
traumatic event that turned into maybe for a little bit feeling traumatized, feeling stuck in it, having to have this big breakthrough, it sounds, moment in therapy to move and heal through it, where now this is a piece of your trauma or grief history, but you are not a traumatized being.
Right.
That's power. That's empowering.
Yeah.
Right? To not be in a chokehold of that experience running your life.
Yeah. And when we talk about like the intergenerational piece, I have a client who has a significant trauma history, and we've done so much work and made so much progress just by revisiting what happened in other generations
Yeah.
and even revisiting really early childhood experiences. And I was going to ask you, I was trying to find it while we were talking, but I saw this thing that was like trying to negate ACEs, or that it's not quite maybe as powerful or accurate as they thought it was, which is the adverse childhood experiences. But I was like, there are some cases, right, where you have these traumatic event and experience just one after another, and neglect and abuse and all of these things. And some people still come out resilient, happy, healthy because they have this support system and have done a lot of work and maybe have been in therapy for a long time. And then others don't necessarily have that resource. But it's just been really interesting for me to watch. And I had an intern in our session the other day, and some things have been like coming back up. And I was like, has anything significant happened around this time? Is this, maybe it's this date, maybe it's this month, maybe it's summer, maybe is there anything significant within this time frame? And some of these things like started coming up, and you could just see, oh, okay, like I don't have to hold on to this and dwell on this because now I have an explanation for it, and we process it and let it go.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think that points to a couple things. When it comes to ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, if you don't know what that embodies or encompasses, I encourage you to look it up. But I think maybe, I haven't heard of the critiques, but maybe the consideration there is that it doesn't hold nuance, right? And the idea that two people, even birth order related, two people in different families, two people in the same family can go through the same adverse childhood experience and have completely different emotionality and reactions from it. And I think we're thinking about the nuance, even thinking about children of divorce, right? There's children who are of a certain age where they can be pulled into the middle. They can be one parent's confidant, one parent's dumping ground, and like be in this really tricky, tumultuous position where you're seeing verbal abuse, emotional abuse, who knows what else, where that is completely dismantling because there's so many systemic pieces that'll have to be untangled later on.
Right.
Whereas maybe like a 2-year-old child whose parents really aren't feeling it and aren't in love, get divorced, but they still are amicable and have a really friendly, loving relationship with each other and the child, and they're active in their lives. On the ACE score, that's the same ACE score.
Right.
But when we label it out and put some context to it, it looks completely different. So I hear that and I see that. But I think that when we're looking at the ACE score and different pieces, when we're pulling those things up, maybe that first experience of having an anxiously attached or even codependent relationship with mom ends up having multiple partners who come in and out of life, have different histories of their own, and maybe are abusive or different concepts in your life that are coming in and out where we're stacking it. That's when we see things like CPTSD, chronic stress, chronic trauma, right? And most of these, all of these are not yet in the DSM or considered, right, on that mental health insurance based reality of what we're allowed to diagnose. But I think that's a big reality that we're missing here, is that there's a compounding effect, almost like that bucket effect that we talk about in health, that like when it adds up, of course it's going to pour over and it's going to show up as other things.
Right.
And I also think about the Chowchilla case. Have you heard of Chowchilla?
I don't think so.
Okay. Wait, I learned of this from Waking the Tiger, which is another great book on
Oh, yeah.
trauma.
Okay.
And you can look it up if you want a more eloquent description of what happened. Ultimately, a bus of young children was hijacked by some person who brought them into this cave. And there's that like syndrome where a lot of the children are obeying and fawning, right? A lot of these are the contexts that are happening in our prefrontal cortex that we do not have control of. But one of these little ones took control of the situation, found an escape, and got himself and the other kids out of the situation, and ultimately was like their savior. And they did a longitudinal study of all of these kids, and the impact of the trauma affects all of the other little ones way more than that, like resilient savior that got them out of that situation.
Mhm.
And I've chills talking about it. It's just the
Yeah.
most powerful thing that I don't know what that little boy had in his genetics or his
Yeah.
environment that put him in that position that he was able to flee and to protect those other children. But what a powerful component of this conversation that, like,
Yeah.
we have different reactions, we have different heredity, we have different lived experiences. And in turn, we can have a lot different reactions or experiences of trauma and stress in our bodies and how we live through that. It's so much more nuanced, I think, than we let on, is my ultimate point.
Yeah. And we're all individual human beings who process and perceive the world differently. So it makes sense that we would react, respond, show up in the world differently. And I think that piece also gets missed because we're all seemingly like human. We're still all very different individual people.
Mhm.
And it's okay. It is okay that our experiences are different.
And I think that's why I love relational therapy and also psychodynamic approach in therapy, because it allows you to really get to know that individual and their history. And now with the book we're reading, this idea of generational trauma, to really understand that individual from an environmental, genetic, and personality component really allows us to personalize and tailor that treatment to understand them rather than just blanket everyone in the same box. And I think that's the beauty of psychotherapy and having a relationship with a great therapist that you feel safe and comfortable with, is they can know you deeper than maybe we even know ourselves and help us know ourselves in that deeper way and our tendencies and why things land and are experienced in such a particular way that's maybe a little bit different than one of our siblings or our friends who have gone through something similar. We really are different and an embodiment of all of our different like parts and experiences to be the one that we're showing up as today.
Yeah. What a great conversation. I want to be mindful of our time before we run on to the next thing. What are your final thoughts, words, support, which we end on?
Building your support system, I think, is the biggest protective factor that you can have in regards to mental health, in regards to a protective factor from suicidality, in regards to even thinking about longevity and even thinking about like blue zones and the impact of community on our mental health and the joy in which we live through. It can be tricky when we feel isolated and we're being told, well, just get some friends, build some community. But if we can have one safe person or a couple people that we see once a week in like maybe a class that we're taking or a club that we join, right? It can make the world of a difference in how we feel about ourselves and the world around us. So my encouragement is to get outside,
Yeah.
to meet a friend, to get uncomfortable, put yourself in that like new tennis or run club or join a knitting
Pickleball.
group or
Go play some pickleball.
an online club like us. Like
Yes.
the amount of joy it brings me to speak to therapists around the United States, sometimes Canada, is so deeply powerful in feeling seen, heard, and understood as a human. And I just think that it's a gift that keeps on giving to build a support network around you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. And like you said, go outside, go get some flare pens and a notebook and start journaling. Take the
Better
rigidity
yet,
out of it.
yeah, go sit outside with your journal.
There we go.
Double whammy.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. I was driving to work today and I was like, I think we're going to make this an every other season thing.
I love it. That's so
Yeah.
special to me. I'm really here to just chat with Ryan because she's the
I
best.
love
But
it. Oh, thank you.
thank you to everyone who listened.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for hours and days, but this
We
is
could.
so
And maybe next time we should plan for 2 hours and make it a longer episode because I think we both have so much to say and can go back and forth. The conversation would be well if we had more time.
I'm totally down.
Yeah. Real quick, Amanda, Instagram, Resilient Social Worker.
Resilient Social Work on Instagram, on TikTok, and I write some blogs on WordPress. I have a Be Gentle to Your Mental line that you can find in my bio if you want a cute tote or a little hoodie or t-shirt or hat to sport around for mental health awareness. It's all very cute.
Thank you again for being here. It's
Thanks
always
for
a
having me.
pleasure.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.